So welcome everybody to the third episode of our series, hopefully ongoing series about the intersection of philosophy and psychology. We might touch a little bit on that specifically here, but my guest is a very special guest to me, Michael Liebowitz. You might recognize him from being a panelist on the reality show. One of the reasons I love the guy is he laughs at my jokes. He laughs at almost everything I do. I laugh at almost everything he does. I feel like we've been separated at birth for some reason or another. Not sure why that is yet. Maybe we'll find out during this conversation. But to me, Michael is a perfect example of how philosophy can change your life. So, Michael, without further ado, talk to me if you can. Just give me a brief autobiography of your life for everybody who does not know, and I think it's public knowledge now. You spent quite a bit of time in prison, and
A little bit,
it
yeah.
was at the end of a criminal career. And so tell us a bit about this criminal career and how it ended up that you ended up with, what was it, 25, 30-year prison sentence at the
I
end?
spent 25 years, yeah, but as far as a career goes, I don't know, it wasn't very lucrative. I can say that.
Of course,
Not
that
that I'm
makes
making a
sense.
ton of money now, but I wasn't making any then. Um, I don't know where you want me to begin. Do you want me to begin with the criminal career, or do you want me to start a little bit before that?
Yeah, let's. What do you? Yeah, we could start a little bit before that because I want to get a sense of the bookends, so to speak.
Okay. I grew up in a low income housing project in Weathersfield, Connecticut. Now, this is not your typical project you see in movies or television. It was small, but it was, you know, a state housing project that I grew up in. There was a lot of kids in the neighborhood. Some were troublemakers, some weren't. And my mother, who was a heroin addict, raised me. My father was in and out of my life. He is a heroin addict and an alcoholic. And from a young age, for whatever reason, I was always attracted to the bad kids in the neighborhood. That's who I wanted to hang out with. There were good kids, but there were bad kids too. And I went toward the bad kids. Now, part of it, I mean, I was taught to be violent from a young age. When I was 6 years old, a neighborhood kid strangled me, and I came home, and my mother, instead of saying, "We're going to go talk to the kid's parents," told me, "Well, you go get a bottle and you hit him over the head with it." Now I'm 6 years old. My mother tells me to do that. So, I did it. But as I got older and older, I continued to be attracted to the troublemakers, the violent kids. And my father, he had a reputation for being very tough. He was very feared, and that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be like my dad. Problem is, my father was 6 feet, 180 pounds. I'm not. I'm at this point, I'm 5'8", 175 pounds. When I was a kid, I was, very small. So whenever I tried to fight anybody, I inevitably got my ass kicked. And that's not fun. And
No.
so wanting to be a tough guy and not being a tough guy, I improvised and I resorted to brutality. And, I used weapons and I got friends. And I remember I could tell you the specific day when I kind of set my conscience aside. I was in Hartford. I had started hanging around in Hartford kids. Now, Hartford's the capital of Connecticut, is the city it borders Weathersfield. And so I started hanging around with Hartford kids and I wanted to fit in. And we were walking down the street in Hartford, and a friend of mine saw a kid with a chain in his neck, and he said, "I want to jump that kid and take his chain." I had never done anything that serious before, but wanting to fit in, I wasn't going to say, "Oh, hold on, guys, not me." I'm not in that, so got into it, and we beat the kid up pretty badly. The irony is, my friend ripped the chain off the kid's neck and then left it next to him, and didn't take it. But I remember going home that night, and I had these pangs of guilt. I just felt awful about myself for what I had done. I felt so badly. But I realized, well, if I'm going to be hanging around with these kids and this is the life I want, I can't be feeling this way. And I just pushed it out of my head. I what Dr. Samenow would refer to as cut off. I cut off the feeling of guilt. And each time I
For
committed a
everybody
violent
who doesn't
act,
know, Dr. Samenow wrote a book called Inside the
yeah,
Criminal Mind. It has a completely different take on how to cure criminality, I guess, how to change people
yes.
from that lifestyle over to one in which they are what quote unquote normal. Anyway, go ahead.
he would call them responsible. Is this term
Responsible.
he would make to become responsible people. So I cut it off, and with each violent act I committed, I cut it off more and more. And it's interesting because a lot of people they see my crimes that are official and they say, "Oh, look, this guy's awful," and they hate me. But I mean, in reality, that's just a drop in the bucket to for the things that I was doing. We get away as criminals with far more than we ever get caught for. And if people want to hate me for that, that's fine. That's their right. I can't change it. It's in the past. It's over with. But so just to give you an illustration of the sort of the background that I had, the first gun I ever owned, I got from a friend of my father's. And one day we were driving and we were going to buy some weed, and we went to the first spot and there was no one there. So then they said, "Well, where else can we go?" I said, "We can go to the north end of Hartford." Now, the north end of Hartford, they're known for robbing people. If you go there, oftentimes you'll get robbed. Not often, but sometimes. So I had the gun on me, and someone says, "Well, what if they rob us?" And there was a girl in the car, so I'm showing off, and I said, "Well, if they rob us, I'll shoot them. That's what's going to happen." Now, I had never shot anybody, and I had no intention of shooting anybody, and I never thought we were actually going to get robbed. But sure enough, we went there, and they robbed us. And now I'm sitting there with a gun in my pocket, the girl in the back seat after I've been running my mouth, and that insecurity and that wanting to be tough and wanting to show off all came back. So I shot at the guy. Whether I hit him or not, I don't know. But I went home and my father was sleeping, and I woke him up and I said, "Dad, I just shot a guy in Hartford." He said, "Okay, that's good." And he rolled back over and went to sleep. Like there was no, there's no lecture about it or anything else. It was just, okay, that's pretty normal. Anyway, so you go a little bit forward. I ended up dating this girl. I met her, I was 18 and she was 15, and some people have a problem with that. And again, that's fine too. And we dated for a year and a half. And when we broke up, she ended up with a new boyfriend, and he and I had words. And it'd be easy for me to say, "Well, it was all me. I was just a jerk." But he gave some too. You know what I mean, as far as threatening me and whatnot. But nothing serious. But the primary driver of my activity was jealousy. I didn't like the fact that my girlfriend was with someone new. So after a while, I arranged for my friends to go over and beat him up. And one of those friends stabbed him while he was sleeping. And for that, I ended up with a 27-year sentence, in addition to some other sentences for assaults, drugs, and stuff that, I mean, I could just talk about, it would take up the whole hour. But from that, I ended up in prison, 21 years old. I had a 33-year total effective sentence, which at 21 years old, and I'd only been in jail 9 months at the time, seemed to me a life sentence. I mean, it was, if I did that sentence, I thought it was over. Now I'm 47, so, so what, 7 more years and I'll be 54. It doesn't seem so old to me now, but then it seemed like that's forever. So that's how I ended up in prison. And I suppose now it's time to turn it back over to you.
Well, what initially amazes me is how sort of similar our lives were. Not my mother wasn't a heroin addict, but I had men in and out of my life. That My stepfather was extremely violent, an alcoholic, unpredictable, had what I think we would diagnose today as PTSD. He was a World War II veteran who was in Guadalcanal, and he fought in some of these terrible wars and saw terrible things for an 18-year-old. But he was a very violent, unpredictable person. And so going home was always a dreaded experience for me. It was the last place on earth that I wanted to be. And I started to act out as well. I mean, most of my friends were pretty good, but, I was starting to vandalize things. I'd fight a lot. I'd get in tons of fights with people. And I remember hitting this kid with this switch, but I had a completely different take in that moment where you could go one way or the other. I decided that I'm hurting people and I don't like that. I'm making people afraid of me, and I don't like that. And that was a conscious decision I made very early on that turned my personality. Now, where I had I think the only reason I could make that choice is where you were absent an enlightened witness. At least I had my mother, who, despite her flaws, loved me, and even though she was sort of like a sister or a friend and not necessarily a mom. I mean, I smoked pot with her. It was a lot of inappropriate stuff there. She nonetheless made me feel a sense of love and a certain sense of consistency. And even though she never taught me values, something in that reflection of love made me value myself enough to see that I'm going down the wrong path and I could continue and harden myself to the things that I'm doing. We're talking fights every single day and just lots of violence, because I couldn't take it out on my stepdad. Or I could turn over a new leaf and make friends with people and try to be benevolent. So my first turn was a conscious choice at a very young age that I was doing terrible things, and had to change. But when was the prison sentence itself a turning point for you when you saw your life
No.
flash before your eyes? Okay, go ahead. Tell us
No,
what
and
happened.
and I should give a little bit more information too, as far as the autobiography, because it's very easy to just go from A to Z and leave an awful lot out. So you mentioned that there was no basically good influences that I had, but the truth of the matter is there were. There were cops in my town that would reach out to me. I remember once there's this cop, and I'm friends with him to this day. He still helps me and looks out for me. But I went to a dance, a school dance. I was 15 and I was very intoxicated. And he pulled me over. He patted me down. He said, "Listen, even if you had anything, I wasn't going to bust you." He said, "I just want to talk to you." He said, "I went to school with your father." He says, "Your father was always a good kid, but he had poor self esteem. And so he used drugs and it ruined his life." And his basic message was he didn't want to see that happen to me. Of course, I didn't listen to him. I didn't care what he said. I wanted to go back to the car and smoke some more weed. But in retrospect, I see that there were a lot of moments like that where people tried to reach out, tried to help me, whether they were teachers, guidance counselors, cops, whatever. I just didn't care. I didn't want it. Like you said, you made a conscious choice. I made a conscious choice to go the other direction. I remember one day I was 17 years old and I was walking and I started having these thoughts about maybe I ought to turn this thing around. Like, do I really want to be a lifelong criminal? And I did the same thing as when I was 14 and we assaulted the kid. I pushed those thoughts out of my head. I said, no, I want, this is what I want. I want to be a criminal. I want to go forward. But for the specific crime that I ended up in prison for, I was jealous. But so my mother started leaving me alone when I was 6. That's the first thing. And oftentimes she wouldn't come home, and I would always develop this fear my mother's not going to come home. When I was 8, my father and his wife beat my mother savagely in the street, kicked her, and there was witnesses all up and down the street. Nobody helped, and I thought my mother was going to die. My mother overdosed twice, where I thought she was dead, and she wasn't. So I developed this fear inside me that I was going to lose my mother. My mother's going to be taken away from me. My mother's going to die. And then I sort of projected that onto my other relationships, whether they were with friends, girls, but romantic relationships, it was especially strong, this fear of abandonment. So I tried to control them. I had this idea, I guess, that if you tell somebody what to do, you can make somebody stay, make someone love you, which of course you can't. But I thought I could. And so once I got into the position with my girlfriend when I was at the time 20, where she met a new guy, I had this like perfect storm of a matrix inside my head of abandonment fears, jealousy, anger, acceptance of violence, valuing the criminal lifestyle, valuing this reputation as a gangster. So all these things came together that made that behavior seem okay to me. And again, I mean, like I said, I was 17 and I had the thoughts to push it out. I didn't. Again, when I was 18, I got involved in the Amway business for a little while and I started to turn my life around. But then I went back and decided no. So there were moments in my life when I had the chance. I just didn't take advantage of it. But no,
Yeah.
to answer your question about the prison sentence, at the beginning, no, didn't cut it. It didn't do it. Not at first.
I mean, the psychologist Alice Miller, who I used to sort of love, not so much anymore, but she talks about the value of an enlightened witness in someone's life. And to me, that probably means a persistent presence in your life, not just the cop who pulls you over sometimes. It's like, hey, man, it's a mentor who takes you under their wing, constantly giving you the attention that you need, sort of like Customato did to Mike Tyson. Like You need that enlightened witness that reflects something positive for you in a persistent, consistent manner. And even that didn't really help Mike because he needed a philosophical revolution later on. But so you're in prison now. And what's your mental attitude in prison from the moment that you enter?
At first, I joined the gang. I still had the same want to be tough idea. I was scared to death, and the gang offered protection. And I was still doing drugs. I would have my mother bring me and, she'd smuggle me heroin in through the visits. And so that's what I did. And then one day I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to turn this thing around. I want to change. And I harkened back to my Amway days. So while in Amway they had this teaching system called Worldwide Dream Builders, and as part of that there was a book list that you would read, and it had books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, some Robert Schuller books, a lot of stuff like that. So I started to read that stuff, and I started to change and turn my life around. I was introduced through that stuff to libertarian economics and the philosopher Ayn Rand. But as I was changing, I started to take some hits, like getting denied my appeal and getting denied sentence review. And so I slowly started to migrate backwards. It starts with I had stopped gambling, for instance, but I was very good at card game spades because I have a very good memory, and it's all about remembering cards. So someone would say to me, "Hey, listen, you go play. I'll put up the money. You don't even have to gamble. I'll bet on you." Okay, fine. But then I say, "Oh well, why not just bet for myself?" And then it becomes, well, why just play this game? Why not play another game? And then you lose money. Well, I lost money, and well, how can I pay this money back? I'm broke. Oh, I know what I can do. I can have my mother bring me heroin, and then I can sell the heroin and pay it off. And then the heroin's there, and I say, well, now that I got the heroin, I might as well just do a little bit of it and sell the rest. And then it's like, okay, well, why not just start using heroin again? So from 2002 to 2004, I was just enmeshed in, getting high, doing drugs, gambling, getting into all kinds of nonsense. But then it got to be like just too much. And I don't know what at that moment kicked in my head. I had been reading a lot of good books. I never stopped reading. So I was reading, I read Ayn Rand. I read Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, Virtuous Selfishness. And what I wasn't consistent with what I wanted to be. And I knew the only
Did
way
those
to
did those
get
books
there.
give you did those books give you
Yeah.
the ideal of what you wanted to be?
Yeah, I would say so. I didn't, by any stretch of the imagination, fully comprehend what was in them at the time, but I knew that the ethics of self interest really attracted me. And so in May of 2004, I stopped doing heroin, and I haven't done it since. I just said, I'm done. I'm not doing it ever again. And I haven't. I quit gambling, and I made a decision that I am going to become a good human being. Now, something that benefited me immensely was that I had my best friend with me, Brent McCall. He and I had been reading, we'd been debating, reading together, but he was way, when he was in prison, he got in a lot of trouble. But at the same time, he and I decided we were going to turn our lives around. So from 2004 ultimately till I want to say 2018, he and I embarked on a self improvement journey together. 11 of those years we were cellmates. And I can't overstate just how beneficial it is to have somebody that's going to hold you accountable. Oh, no, you're doing this wrong. No, you're doing that wrong. Oh, why don't you do this? Or why don't you think about this? And we're debating and arguing. And Brent is as direct as a heart attack. He doesn't mince words. He has no problem telling people what he thinks. So while that's hard sometimes, it still benefited me incredibly to have that for so many years. And like I said, even today, if I'm talking to him on the phone and he's still incarcerated and I tell him that I'm thinking this way or I did this, he will call me out in a second. And that's very, very helpful.
I think it is helpful to have like a workout partner, somebody who holds you accountable to the values that you set for yourself. And I think that's good for our listeners, for the people who are going to be watching it on YouTube later. Remember that because, like in the Alcoholics Anonymous system, you have a sponsor. and that's a sort of philosophy. I mean, in some respects, it reflects objectivism. Aside from the religious aspects of it, there are objectivist aspects to it where you have to hold yourself accountable. You make yourself a moral agent, and you have a sponsor who holds you accountable too. To the values that you've committed yourself to in order to maintain your sobriety. So here you have your best friend who's incarcerated with you. You're both going on this philosophical journey. You've made the conscious choice, and that's very important. That's the conscious choice I made when I was younger to be a better person. You made the conscious choice. You wanted to be a good person. That was a value to you, and you set about doing it deliberately for this what is a period of 10 or 11 years with the help of a partner to reflect ideas back and forth with, which is the way you grow. You debate, you argue, and through that debate and argumentation and calling out each other on whether or not you're living up to the values you claim you're holding, you start to grow and understand and integrate those values, and they become a part of your behavior. So then what happens sort of after this?
So there's a story I think that'll help just to show how difficult this is. Dr. Samenow and Yokelson said for a criminal to change, they know of no harder task that human beings could ever embark on. So I should tell you. So we had read not only Ayn Rand, but Nathaniel Branden as well, and his Psychology of Self-Esteem. That we read Albert Ellis and also Aaron Beck, and the cognitive behavioral stuff. And then we read also Dr. Stanton Samonow's book, Inside the Criminal Mind. And reading it, it was like a blueprint to the way that we thought. It was amazing. We were so skeptical when we bought, Brent bought the book, and we're like, hey, who the hell is this guy? He's going to tell us how we think. But he nailed it. And he talks about things like it's not drugs, it's thugs. The criminals are making choices. Their crimes are a function of the way they think, not the way they were raised. They have to take 100% responsibility for their behavior if they're ever going to change. And he also says you can't allow a criminal even one lie. For the criminal has to go from total irresponsibility to total integrity. And that lined up with what Ayn Rand talked about with moral perfectionism, or what Nathaniel Branden talks about, where he says in order to have self-esteem, you have to have a view of morality, and you have to act in accordance with that. And also, the view that the cognitive behavioral therapists talk about, where it's how you think determines how you feel. And so Sam and I would say you don't focus on a criminal's feelings, you focus on his thinking. So all these things kind of came together. But the idea specifically that you can't allow a criminal one lie. So I had a guy who worked third shift, and while he worked third shift in the prison system, he would go to the kitchen, and they would steal sandwiches out of the kitchen, and I would buy the sandwiches. So one day I was walking laps around the block, and Brent had a very disturbed look on his face. And I went over to him. I said, what's going on? And he said, it's just, I'm thinking. And so I said, what? He said, Samenow says that, you can't allow a criminal and change even one lie. And he brought up, he says, now you're buying these sandwiches that are stolen. So wouldn't you then be implicated in that theft? So you'd have to stop that. And then he brought up how he had contraband markers that someone had stole from some office. And he's like, I have these. And he said, I'm not saying I'm going to give them back. I don't know that I am at this point. He hadn't made that decision yet. But if we're going to do this, then this is the type of thing we have to give up. And through the years living that in prison, where all the benefits that you can, not all, but a significant amount of the benefits or creature comforts in prison are stuff like that. So if you want to have good cleaning supplies, the block janitors steal the stuff and they'll sell it to you. Or if you want to have a sponge, that someone steals it and sells it to you. There's all types of things like that we had to give up. So we're basically, we're living, I don't want to say as ascetics, because that's going to be a bit extreme, but we were living far less comfortable than what we otherwise would be in order to continue doing that. Now, when you do that in prison, you're putting yourself at odds with everybody, because a guy will say to you, hey, pass this along to so-and-so. No, I'm not doing it. What? You're not doing it? Or even the COs will expect you to do things you're not supposed to do. So they start looking down on you. Brent, I remember one time, and he talks about this quite a bit, is he got a commissary bag and there was extra stuff in his bag that he didn't order. So he went to return it. And the commissary state worker looked at him like, what are you, crazy? You're not going to take this free stuff? But he didn't. And, so that's the type of stuff that the change process entails. It's a constant self crucifixion of realizing where our thinking is still going in a criminal direction and how we can bring that back into line, or back into line for the first time, really, to develop integrity.
I find it sort of ironic that a system that claims to be about rehabilitation actually incentivizes criminality throughout. Like the
Oh,
entire
okay.
system, is actually about criminalization. If you want to live and be comfortable, you got to be an accomplice to theft. And
Sure.
lying and dishonesty, and that just shows how creepy the system is. But
Yeah.
one of the things that you said that I think is great from Samenow, and very much in the objectivist vein, you can't allow yourself even one lie. Now, that's just not for the criminal attempting to cure himself of criminality. I say that to my guests here and to anybody who's going to watch this on YouTube. You, as a human being, cannot even allow yourself one lie. One of the great things about Rand's heroes is that they are all accessible, right? They're not unreachable characters like Jesus in the Bible. We can't do what Jesus did. We can't levitate. We can't rise from the dead. We can't raise other people from the dead.
Speak
Um,
for yourself, okay? Because
okay,
you don't know what I
maybe
can do.
yeah, okay. Okay. I have a feeling you do have these special powers. I do not. There's tons of things I can't do that Jesus apparently could do. But you know what I could do? I could have unbreached self-esteem. I could have unbreached integrity. I could be completely and totally honest. This is why honesty and integrity are two very high virtues in the objectivist ethics, because it's your relationship to reality, and your relationship to reality matters. And the cleaner and clearer that relationship is, the more information you have to make the proper choices for your interest. I could be Howard Rourke. I can't be Jesus Christ. I could be Hank Rearden. I can't be, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. I can't do that. And so that makes Rand's characters very accessible. And I think must have helped you. It gave you a sort of ideal to look at first. Like, this is the kind of person I
Absolutely.
want. I want to be. I'm not that. I had that experience too. Believe it or not, when I finished reading The Fountainhead, I finished reading it on a bus line. I just got randomly on a bus, new to acting. And so, living the bohemian actor's lifestyle, what I thought that was supposed to be. I got on a bus, I rode it all the way to the end of the line, finishing Atlas Shrugged. It gets off somewhere in the North Hills. There's this big, huge island of green in the middle of two highways going back and forth. I step onto this island of green and I started crying hysterically. And I asked myself, why in the fuck am I crying? Um, and it was because I saw Peter Keating, I saw Howard Rourke, and I saw myself in both of them, and had no idea how to bridge the gap between the two of them. Because in the book, it's sort of like these people are just naturally fucked or blessed. And it was like there was no sense that how do you get from being a second-hander who gets his self-esteem based on what other people think, to the guy who's completely independent thinking, creative, original? How do you go from that to that? It seems like an impossible task. I mean, I discovered it over time. It's learning philosophy, integrating it into your own life, and then putting it into practice that slowly builds up that consistency, that the timing meshes so that you can become that person that you want to be. All right,
Yeah.
so I think you agree with that. So you guys are calling each other on the criminality that's saturating the whole
Right.
system, that you're still participating in it. And in order to have integrity, you got to stop. And that puts you at odds with the people that are in prison because they're
Everybody.
incentive with everybody.
Yeah.
So how do you
Yeah.
handle that? Now talk about peer fucking pressure. I mean, we get
Yeah.
pissed off. We talk about peer pressure, because people are fucking with us on social media. You have to deal with this closed environment that's all about violence, all about criminality. And if you don't conform, you are potentially fucked.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
It actually wasn't that hard because I had Brent with me. But you were
And Brent
talking about bridging.
was he a savage? Was Brent a savage? Is that what you're saying?
Brent could be a savage. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you an anecdote that illustrates this that came afterwards when Brett and I wrote our book, and I'll maybe get into a little bit of that later. But Brett and I wrote a book criticizing the prison system, and to do so, we had to address also the ways in which the system facilitated and allowed criminal behavior. So we knew a lot of the inmates were going to get mad at us, the staff were going to get mad at us, the staff might encourage the inmates to hurt us, might let them hurt us. Now, Brent is a fearless dude. I'm not. I'm small and I'm scared. And I only even wrote the book to begin with because Brent's my boy. Brent asked me, listen, will you help me write this book? And as scared as I was, I said, you know what? With you, I'll do it. So I'm talking to Brent one day and I said, you know, dude, I'm really scared. These inmates find this out, and it might be problematic. And Brent looked at me dead serious with the intent on making me feel better. And he says, Mikey, look, the chances of dying from getting stabbed are very slim. And I said, what the hell kind of pep talk is that? I'm not thinking about getting stabbed. I'm thinking getting punched. That you're bringing up getting stabbed. I'm like, what the? But that type of stuff. Brent cut a piece of his finger off on a table saw and wouldn't go to medical. He's just that's just how he is. The dude is a fearless human being, both physically and morally. But you mentioned that bridging that gap, and I think that as Nathaniel Branden was at pains to point out, you have to acknowledge what it is, what you are, what's inside, because evading it, no matter how painful, no matter how hard, no matter how scary, doesn't make it go away. Then you have to, I think, use self-talk and action to dispel the stuff that's inside you. So if I back up just a little bit to where I'm talked about my fears of abandonment, my insecurity. So about this time, I realized that fueled so much of my conduct, and I had to fix it. So what was the root of it? Well, my parents, they weren't there for me. I realized how much I felt not only unloved, but unlovable, how much mistrust I had for human beings, that they would run out on me or abandon me, that I couldn't take it, that I needed to be liked. So I set out to start fixing that. So every night before bed, I would run through a train of things in my head. One, that just because my parents acted that way, that's not a reflection on me, that's a reflection on them. Even if I do lose loved ones, I can handle it. It's not going to kill me. I could take it. Not everybody's like my parents. Not everybody's going to run away. So I sort of went through this every night, going through the evidence for what does reality actually say. And the reality is that people aren't all like my parents. The reality is that I can handle loss and it's not going to kill me. So while I'm going through this process, life decides to intervene and say, oh, really, fucker, we'll show you,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I learned that just because I decide that I want to do what's right or I want to do what's good, there's no justice or injustice for that matter that comes from the universe. It just is. So on May 26, 2008, I got a call over my intercom that said that they wanted me down at mental health. Now I saw mental health, once a month. So I thought, okay, they want to see me. I'll go down there. When I get down there, there was a lieutenant sitting in there. So I know automatically somebody's died because they don't have a lieutenant there unless someone's died. But I'm thinking, well, my father probably died. He had hepatitis C, cirrhosis of the liver. He's real bad off. But the guy looks at me and he tells me, I'm sorry to tell you this. Your mother committed suicide. She jumped off the Portland Bridge. I don't know how else to say it. If you want to make a call, go ahead. And immediately I start going through, the first thing is the denial comes into my head. I wanted to ask him, are you certain? But I know that's the first stage. So I didn't go through that. I allowed myself to feel it. And then I, began to say to myself, well, what can I take from this? What can I learn from this? This is awful. And then it occurred to me that my abandonment, the abandonment fear stemmed in large part from fear of my mother dying. Now the two hit me at once. The ultimate abandonment and my mother committing suicide, knowing what it would do to me, and the incredible loss. But I realized I survived it. I was still breathing. I could still put in work. I could still move forward. And if I could deal with that loss, I can deal with any loss. At that point in my life, I thought that no loss could ever be worse than that. I've subsequently recently found out I was wrong. But nevertheless, at that point, that was the case. And so I was able to really begin to overcome those insecurities, those fears of abandonment, those fears that nobody could love me, the idea that I had to control the people I loved or the people that I cared about all started to go away. Not entirely. Sometimes it still nags, but it's not the overwhelming force that it once had inside me, where I just took it for granted that this was the way it was. So my mother's death ultimately helped me to really grow a lot. As painful as it was, I mean, it still hurt, but I was able to grow. So I guess I get back to the sort of the train is that Brent and I are still in the cell together and we're still growing. And we designed this program called the Imprison Program. It was a rehabilitation program based on the ideas of Ayn Rand, Nathaniel Branden, and Dr. Stanton Samenow. I subsequently found out because Brent and I noticed that these ideas dovetailed together. I subsequently found out from a lecture given by Leonard Peikoff that a lot of objectivists look to Dr. Samenow as sort of the go-to guy on criminal behavior. So that was like verification or vindication for Brent and I. But anyway, so a lot of the guys, while we would facilitate this group, would say things like, "Oh, you want to hold us accountable, but what about the staff? What did the staff do this? The staff's irresponsible. They break the rules." And Brett and I would tell him, and I still believe this to this day, it's not about the staff, it's about you, what you're going to do. While I believe that, however, Brent and I realized that you can't just keep saying that. That if a system that's going to call itself the Department of Corrections is going to function, you can't have irresponsible staff because the inmates are always going to use that as the excuse. From that and an abundance of other things that were going on in the prison system, we were going to write a book called Ayn Rand and the Rehabilitation of Criminals. It was going to be how the application of objectivism and Dr. Samonow's ideas to criminal rehabilitation. But Brent told me, look, criminal rehabilitation on a large scale is not possible in this environment. We need to write a book about the system, and we need to criticize the system, and we need to name names, and we need to name times, because if you do, our credibility sucks. So we need to be able to say this happened on this date. You can go look at the camera and you can see it for yourself. So that's what Brent and I did. We wrote the book Down the Rabbit Hole, How the Culture of Corrections Encourages Crime. And we did just that. And exactly what we thought would happen happened. The staff tried to facilitate violence against us. The inmates, a lot of them were very unhappy. The staff would at times outright lie to the inmates and tell them things were in the book that weren't in the book. And, I still had Brent with me, but then they transferred Brent. And they said that the reason they transferred Brent was because he was in danger that we wrote the book. Now, I wrote to the commissioner of corrections, says that's complete bullshit. And it is, because if he was in danger, I would be too. Why wasn't I transferred? That doesn't make any sense what you're saying. But nonetheless, Brent was gone. So I was alone in a block full of murderers, a good amount of them who would have liked to have killed me. And the staff that were there to protect me would have liked to have seen him do it. So that was that was my lived experience during that period. And I
Well,
was
that
scared
takes
to death. Don't get me wrong, but I kept doing. I got a gig on a radio show, so I kept going on the radio show and exposing what's going on in the system. And now inmates are hearing what I'm saying, and some of it they don't like. Like the guy asked me on the radio, "What would you do to fix the system?" I said one sentence. I said more programming, less play. That the inmates weren't happy that I said they should have less play, but I believed it. And like I said, I was scared, but sometimes you have to do the right thing in life, no matter how scared you are. And that's what I did. And so just kept doing it until I was transferred to another prison. And I'll tell you about that after your next go around.
yeah, yeah, that's one you said sometimes you have to do things no matter how scared you are. As an actor, you understand this principle. You have to ingest this principle, digest it, and practice it every day. And I think it's one of the reasons Aristotle thought that courage was the first virtue, because it made all the other virtues possible. I've gotten some pushback, of course, from objectivists on that, but sometimes it takes a lot of courage to be rational when you're in the face of an irrational culture, which you were in a microcosm. We're seeing it in the macro today with everybody. But it seems like this culture needed to be fixed at the level of law enforcement itself. It seemed like very corrupt individuals were gaming the system for maybe for whatever benefit, but they seem to have a very similar mindset to the criminals and needed to be reprogrammed themselves. So it's not just that criminals needed to have less play and more of a programming. It seemed like the same thing had to happen with the correctional officers. So what a lot of times we have these ideas in our head, these abstractions, these ideals about what should be, what could be, but it takes an actual experience, like for example, your mother killing herself, to make those abstractions become a reality, to make them a felt experience. And I don't necessarily think you can get, I want you to see if you push back with me on this. I don't necessarily think you can get the kind of change or metamorphosis you're looking at until these abstractions become a felt sense. Now maybe you can act on them. It's not a fake it till you make it. I don't buy that, but from the understanding that these virtues that you're doing are good for you, even though it feels completely artificial. That's sort of the way I went about it, and then eventually it just sort of seeps down into your inner being and becomes the authentic you. Actually, Gina Gorlin said something about the authenticity of a person that was very interesting to me the other day, because artists think of the authentic person as, you know, that savage, that child, that beast within that they just let out, you know, that's the id, you know, unregulated by anything. That's your authentic you. They have the Rousseauian concept that civilization crushes you and makes you something inauthentic. But the authentic you as a human being is really that person who looks down the road a long distance to see where values are taking you. That's the authentic you. Um, that new conception of authenticity is something I'm going to I think incorporate, and I hope becomes more of a part of me. But what do you think of that? I mean, when did abstractions become real to you? When did these abstractions become things that you knew you had to follow because your emotions were now leading you in that direction as opposed to away from
Well,
them?
my emotions fought against a lot of what we were doing for a very long time, and it still happens to this day. I mean, like, you know, when we're on the internet and people just say vicious things to me, and you know, I know that because of my criminal past, I really can't get into that with them. Because if I say the slightest thing that comes off as aggressive, it's like, oh, there he is. He's back to his old self. But I got to, but just to open my consciousness, you know, up to you a little bit here. When people do that, sometimes the thought that goes through my head, am I allowed to swear? I've done it a couple times, but I don't know if it's okay here in
Sure.
public.
I have a sailor's mouth, so go ahead.
Okay, so sometimes when these people do that to me, there's a part of me that says, motherfucker, you would never talk to me like that if I was the person you're claiming I was. I mean, that I am. Because when I was that person, you talk to me like that, I'm going to bury you. You know, I mean, that's just a fact. I'm not going to fight. Like, that's laughable to me. You think I'm going to go and we're going to throw hands and then we're going to shake hands after and I'm going to respect you? No. When I was into that, I'm going to hurt you and I'm going to hurt you badly. And the only reason, and this part of me I'm proud of, because the only reason that your punk ass on the motherfucking internet, see, I'm getting aggravated just thinking about it,
Who
feels
doesn't?
yeah, but feels comfortable talking to me like that is because you know on some level that I'm not that person anymore. You
Hmm.
know I'm not. And you know, my
Hmm.
friend that I live with, Subby, he laughs because he knows, and he'll say, "Yeah, that's just that." In prison, we call them cell gangsters. People that when they're behind a closed door, they'll threaten people or yell things when nobody can get to them, and that's what these guys on the internet are. So I mean, I'm learning because I'm new to it, just to push those guys aside. If you want to engage me intellectually, fine. But you want to start insulting me based on things I did a quarter century ago. I have nothing for you. But just to get, the point of this was the emotion stuff. That part of me, it's still buried. It doesn't just disappear entirely. Now, once I get that initial thought, I know to combat it. No, it's not worth it. There's no this guy's not worth getting mad about. Violence isn't the answer. If you threaten this guy, who knows what's going to come of it? Let it go. I know to do that now. When I was 18, I didn't. But that happens still. The emotions, I don't know that they ever completely, I mean, I know that in objectivism and in Nathaniel Brandon's teachings, the idea is to get them to line up completely, your subconscious, conscious values, and your emotions. I've been working on that for over 2 decades, and it hasn't happened completely. It's happened a lot to a significant extent. I no longer feel like a chump if I back down to a fight, whereas there was a point when I did. Even as I was changing, if somebody threatened me and I walked away, I felt bad about myself. That doesn't happen to me anymore. So it does change, but it's slow, and it's very, very, very difficult.
You're practicing jujitsu, my friend, by walking away. That's very good. Well, I think one of the reasons, now I'm of course not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but one of the reasons I think some of those very deep feelings are difficult, if not impossible to entirely get rid of, is because they are a part of our sense of life. And you're building your sense of life at a stage of development that's pre-verbal, pre-conceptual, right? You're experiencing so much stuff as a kid. Your brain is growing at a genius rate. It's taking in so much information, much of which you can't conceptualize and understand, and so that it becomes more visceral, it becomes more in your cells and in your bones. It becomes your sensibility about the way things are. You grew up in a space where it's completely understandable that the universe was not a safe place for you to live, and to be paranoid, scared all the time, and to lash out in violence seems to be a rather appropriate reaction to a universe that's like that. Talking yourself into the phenomenon that the universe isn't really like that, that you're a man with agency, that you actually have choices that you didn't have when you were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age. That takes a while to integrate, and it can integrate down, but still that sense of life. Rand said it's difficult, if not impossible, to change. I mean, I certainly feel very positive about life in a way that I didn't 20 years ago. I feel very positive about people in a way that I didn't 20 years ago because of the integration of these principles. But I also know there's this darkness inside of me that's still there. I'm not hiding it. And sometimes it comes out, and I'm not repressing it, which I think could be a problem for many objectivists. They
Sure.
repress emotional life. I'm aware of it. I know what it is, and it's made me redefine, my own conceptions of what happiness looks like, because happiness will look different for me than it will for you or for anybody else, based on some of these realities that I have to contend with. Now, that said, how does one understand and accept that and at the same time be aspirational? You understand what I'm saying? Like, you have to accept yourself as you are, but at the same time want to grow and go beyond and be even
Sure.
better. You want to be ambitious. You want to be morally ambitious. How do you hold those two seemingly contradictory concepts at the same time?
Well, what I do is I have I don't know if it's, I guess, a two-pronged approach. When I find myself feeling bad about myself for getting angry or getting upset or having a violent thought, is I'll remind myself just how far I've come. And that makes me feel better. I say, okay, there was a time when I wouldn't have just had a violent thought, I would have acted violently. That's not even an option for me any longer. So that's incredible growth. Now, if I start to get too cocky and feel myself complacent as if I've done all the growing I can, I remind myself how far I still have to go. So what it does for me is it keeps a balance. If I'm too confident, it brings me back to reality and helps me to keep grow. If I feel too bad about myself, it reminds me how much I've done, and that restores my level of confidence. Both methods help me to continue to go forward, to continue to grow, to continue to get better.
So it's constant self-talk. I just want to say, yeah, anybody who has a question, raise your hand. And Lou, could you tell me, because I can't really see up there because of the light coming out, who's got questions? But I want to say this one thing first, because I think that's important. I think that self-talk is very important, but there is a hack to that, Michael. I just want to let you know the hack to grandiosity, the hack to thinking badly of yourself is right here on my forehead. I'm not saying that it's the answer.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's not the answer to everything, but look, I'll go through a class where I'll be like getting dominant position on people, submitting them. Oh, I got a triangle on that guy. Choke that dude. Oh, fuck, I'm getting so good. Next day, I get my ass handed to me on a platter in like seconds. I'll roll with Professor Jules, and it's like, how long can I keep from getting tapped out? And it never seems to go beyond like a minute. And so I get literally smeared all over the mat by guys. And it's like, or I could tell somebody's going easy on me. It's like, okay, I really do have so much to learn. Stop being grandiose. You had a good day with a couple of people, but you really are, your knowledge is like minuscule. And that's good. That's a good thing. I have so much to unlock. And there's fifth degree black belts that I know who look at my teacher who's a coral belt. They're like, I'm never gonna get there. And I'm a black belt, and I still go like, there's so much to learn. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm just starting the blue belt, the blue belt phase where 80% of the people drop out. For any of you starting jiu-jitsu, that's where a lot of people drop out. Don't drop out at blue belt unless you get really seriously hurt. Keep going, because once you get to purple, you're likely to get to black. And it's self-talk on the mat. It's self-talk on the mat. So if you have, because I think people like us who, I'm sorry, I'm making myself like somehow we're sort of spiritual brothers in a way. We may or may not be, but we didn't have checks and balances in a way that I think a proper family can give you that sense of checks and balances
Sure.
where you get grandiose, you get your ass handed to you a little bit. You get, down on yourself, somebody brings you up a little bit and helps you give you perspective. We didn't have that barometer. And so our emotional barometers are sort of out of whack and go all over the place. Self-talk is a very good way to bring that back to reality. And jiu-jitsu, where you get the physical self-talk, you get to see exactly where you stand in the world. It's a beautiful thing. Wait, who had their hand up first, Lou? Do you know?
You've got Rose, then Ali, then Katrine.
Okay, Rose, go ahead. What do you have? What's your question?
Hello.
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 Nice to meet you, Michael. Hope you guys
Nice.
are okay. Thank you a lot for doing this.
Nice to meet you as well.
Okay, so I have two questions. I don't know if that's okay or you prefer me just to do one.
Go ahead. I think we have a little bit of time, so go ahead.
Okay. So the first one, I think it's a question that maybe we already talked on Twitter, but I don't recall what was your opinion, Mark, about this. But I think it was 3 summers ago that I was reading this book about the 7 sins. And then in that book, the scientist that wrote it, he was describing that scientifically the human brain of serial killers and psychopaths is different physically. So I was literally wondering by hearing this, criminal conversation and whatsoever, if you guys think that people are literally born evil, or there's any situation or any trauma happens in early life that completely change the people.
Hey, Michael, I heard something from Douglas Murray, ironically, when he was talking about how Hamas has had 18 years to educate an entire generation of sociopaths, and he said not psychopaths because you can't make a psychopath, but sociopaths. And I thought that was an interesting distinction. Do you know anything about that from your reading about the criminal
Yes,
mind?
I do. First of all, there's people that say psychopaths and sociopaths are the exact same thing. Aaron Beck differentiated between primary and secondary psychopaths. So then there's antisocial personality disorder, which differs from psychopathy. I believe in Britain, they still rely on psychopathy. In America, it's antisocial personality disorder. They say that the prisons in America are anywhere 40 to 75% are people that could be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. These terms do not have exact meaning, right? And that's ultimately what I'm getting to, and that makes it problematical. In their book, their 3-volume set, The Criminal Personality, Samuel and Yockelson and Samenow said that criminality exists on a continuum, right? So there's not a sharp break. You're a criminal, you're not. So take something like victim stance, which is one of the criminal thinking errors that they explain, is where people tend to blame other forces for their own behavior, right? Now, most people have done that at one point or another in their life. They say, oh, this is because this guy was late and that's why I'm upset or whatever. Whereas a criminal does that par for the course. It's a matter of just going through the day. Everything is somebody else's fault. Nothing is my fault. But between those two extremes, there's a lot of room. So at what point do you go from a responsible person to a criminal? Oh, damned if I know. I know I'm at the other end of the spectrum where I've done it my whole life. So I know that I'm a criminal. I've heard that the brains of psychopaths are different. I've also heard there's this gene, but then not everybody with the gene ends up a psychopath. So it's very difficult to say. I ultimately don't know. I'm skeptical. I will say this, that as far as if you take a psychopath to be somebody completely devoid of conscience at all, I don't know that I've ever met one, and I did 25 years in prison. I've met people that I might think didn't have a conscience, but I knew a serial killer, a guy that turned out to be a serial killer, and I knew him pretty well. I didn't know he was a serial killer. He got arrested subsequent to my knowing him, but he even seemed to me like he had some morals. Like he was one of the nicest guys I met in prison. His word was good. If he said he's going to do something, he did it. He was generous. And the guy, he murdered, at least 6 women. So I don't know that there's actually people like that. There probably are. And if somebody's seen in a PET scan or an MRI that their brains are different, what I would like to know is, can they look at the brain of somebody without knowing what they've done and say, this person is a psychopath?
It seems to
That
me,
would tell me.
you know what, it seems to me, Michael, that since human beings are evolutionary, right? Their bodies are changing, the synapses in their brains are changing based on their experience. We're adaptable to a variation of experiences. It seems to me that they would have to start doing brain scans on infants from almost fresh out of the
Yeah.
womb to see if there's similarities in brain activity to some psychopath later on down the road, and then and do their behaviors, because of course a person's brain patterns are going to be, they're going to be set by, not determined, but set by a number of factors, not the least of which are their own choices, which cement then behaviors and become automatized and then become features of their nervous system. So I think it's super hard to say, is a psychopath born, or are they made? Is a sociopath made, or is it born? I think it's the science doesn't know.
Even if you could show with unwavering certainty that a 30-year-old psychopath has a different brain, this goes exactly what you're talking about, Mark. That doesn't mean he was born or she was born that way, because our thoughts and experiences also impact our brain development and what our brains look like, what our brains do. So there's no way to know. It's like Mark said, unless you're going to look at the brain of an infant and then make a prediction based on it, I don't know that I would ever say someone's born that way. And I really, to be honest, I don't think it matters. I think what matters is what can be done to ameliorate the criminal thinking of the vast majority of criminals who aren't psychopaths. If somebody is an unreformable psychopath, lock them up forever and leave them there. And that's the only.
But I mean, if a psychopath means lacking conscience, that doesn't mean lacking agency. That means they can still have an abstract view of what's virtuous and what isn't, and whether or not their emotions go along with it, or whether or not they understand the consequences of their behavior. They can still do the right thing despite the emotional reward, if they're missing that component of the emotional reward of virtue. Or the other side of it, which is the penalty, the emotional penalty for doing bad. They can still nonetheless abstractly move in the world, move by abstraction.
Mark, I actually had a discussion with a psychiatrist about this very issue 20 some odd years ago. And what he told me was that a psychopath, he said, a normal person walks down the street and he sees somebody with a watch that he wants. And he says, oh, wow, I really like that watch. But that's the end of it. Whereas a psychopath says, I want that watch. I'm going to take it. And I don't care what happens to this other guy. Basically, a psychopath will do whatever he perceives as is in his own interest, regardless of whom he hurts. And I asked the psychiatrist, well, what if that psychopath could learn that type of behavior is actually contrary to his best interest? that he's wrong in his assessment that by hurting people, he's going to benefit himself. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, there's psychopaths out there that know that, and they don't kill people. They don't rob people because they understand the consequences of their behavior.
There you go. That's, I think that's a great answer. Rose, what was your other question?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add that in my opinion, I don't think that people are born evil. I don't think anyone does, but I believe they already come with this gene, let's say a mental problem. Let's not also forget that only maybe like 30 years ago, the society has become aware of these, mental diseases, because we've seen what happened in the last century. They were all called crazy, and so I'm kind of happy that we are all kind of becoming aware of this. So I think what happens is something happens in their childhood that sets them off like that. So that's what I think regarding the topic.
Well, and a culture that denies moral agency too doesn't make it any easier to overcome, these pathological responses, which I think we're seeing a lot of today, a lot of pathological responses to the world, because the academics have decided for decades, and now have educated generations of people to deny the rational faculty. There's something else that's more important out there. It's your emotional life, it's how you feel. Nothing is objective. All of that stuff, I think, is in part what's reflected in the epidemic of mental illness that we see today. It's not just that we're more open to it and more people are confessing to it. It's that they have less tools to deal with the problems, I think, that they're having than they did before. Thanks for your question, Rose. Lou, who is next?
Yep, you've got Ali next.
Allie, what's up?
Hey, okay. So my question is specifically just for Michael. Michael, you talked about how sometimes that people like get onto you for your past and all that, and they just judge you for that. When it comes to social media, especially with people like Dave Smith, I read a bit of that thread and I thought it was a bit ridiculous, like how some people went after you and Mark the way they did. And I was just wondering how do you process stuff like that when it comes to people like Dave Smith that's doing all this, and then he has his followers come and try to dox you or whatever? I'm just wondering, what kind of experience is that for you?
Well, the idea that anybody is going to dox me is silly, because I've heard this before. I was a public figure in my home state for years before I ever set foot on social media. While I was in prison, I went through the same thing. I'm a regular guest on the Todd Feinberg show. It's the most popular political show in Connecticut. And from almost the moment he started having me on as a regular guest, the same thing. Oh, you're a criminal. He's this, he's that. And so I've already dealt with that. And I'm honest about it. I'm open about it. Like, you're not putting anything out there that isn't already known. It gets a bit annoying, I think, more than anything else, because I'm trying to have a legitimate debate about issues, and somebody just says, oh, well, you're a criminal and this is what you did. And now I can either respond and show them how ridiculous it is, or just ignore it. And with some of the people, it's easy to just ignore. With Dave Smith, specifically, and this goes back to what Mark and I were talking about earlier, when about fear and doing the right thing in spite of fear. I initially came to the conclusion that I needed to disengage with Dave Smith because of the toxic comments that you're talking about. But it didn't sit right with me. And I put it on social media because a couple people said you shouldn't be engaging in that stuff. He's not important. And so I said, I'm not going to do that anymore. But there was something inside me that was telling me that that's not the right decision. And I even asked Mark, I'm like, I've only got, I'm trying to build a brand here. And I've only got 1,100 and something followers as it is. And I know that I risk losing some of those if I end up in these tedious debates that they're not interested in. But the problem is to me, those debates are very important. Dave Smith has 500,000 followers and a significant amount of influence, and is seen by many as the spokesperson for the ideas that have governed my life for 2 decades. I think he's dangerous to those ideas. I think he's dead wrong. And I think if he ever agrees to debate me, I'll show that his entire philosophy is built on a house of cards, because he makes moral proclamations, but he's never once that I've seen defended his moral foundation. So I think it's
I
important.
I didn't know there was a moral foundation to
No,
his
well, there's
libertarianism.
probably isn't. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but there is, but I don't think he even understands it, and it's wrong.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to have that debate, and because of that, I will take more, for lack of a better word, abuse from him than I'm willing to take from his random sycophantic followers. If they start attacking me, you're a criminal or this, and they call me a rapist because I was 18 and had a 15-year-old girlfriend, I'm getting rid of them. Like, I'm just blocking them. I don't care. I don't need to listen to that. I don't need to hear it. They're nobody. He has influence. And that's why, to me, that's important. And he can come up with all the excuses he wants about, well, you're not famous enough for me to debate. Well, I'm famous enough for you to morally attack on Twitter. So you can do, you can't, in my view, have it both ways. If you're saying my voice is insignificant, then don't respond to me. But if you're going to go and say, first of all, he said, you've lost the moral outrage card for life, he said to me, because you try to have a young girl killed. First of all, I didn't try to have a young girl killed. He's wrong. It didn't happen. The attack that I went to prison for, and anybody that wants can read the case, it was never even asserted, let alone was I convicted of trying to have her attacked. She got cut on her knee, it's true, by mistake. The friend of mine that broke in the house to stab Hector, her boyfriend, accidentally cut her leg because they were in bed together. Before they went to the house, I specifically told everybody involved, do not do anything if she's near there. I don't want her touched. Don't hurt her. You know, that doesn't make me a hero. Look, I still arranged to have a guy stabbed. I was a scumbag. I'm not defending that. I'm just saying that I did not try to have her hurt. But that's what Dave Smith asserted. So I responded. I said, look, you don't have to debate me if you don't want, but if you're going to pass a fallacious judgment on me, at least get your facts straight. And I gave him the case. I haven't heard from him since. But I just think it's dishonest of him to make those types of comments. On the one hand, you're not important enough, or like you told Mark, oh, I was going to debate you, but now you've insulted me, so now I'm not going to. But then I
Was
turned
that
on
his
his pod.
was that his thing? Was that his thing?
Basically, that was the gist of it. But
Fucking
then I put on a podcast of his where he's just bragging about how he's just destroying everybody in debates. It's so easy, and I'm just like, this guy needs to be defeated. That whole wing of the Libertarian Party and libertarian philosophy, I think, needs to be defeated. And if it means I'm going to have to lose followers or take insults, oh well.
And you know that I told you, I think I remember telling you, to lose followers and do what you follow your integrity, from what I remember, because
Yeah.
I lose 100 followers a week, because nobody wants to hear the Palestinian shit. Nobody wants to, my demographic and my fandom skews left. They don't want to hear me talking about Israel, but it's literally a front in the war. And for me to be silent in the face of a vast organized anti-Semitic movement that has now cast itself as anti-Zionism would be tantamount to remaining silent when the brown shirts were taking over the Nazis and becoming the Nazis in the streets and starting to dehumanize Jews. It's the same thing. So I can't be silent, whether I lose followers or not, whether people get on my game or not. Likewise, a guy like Dave Smith is ruining the Libertarian Party, which was already fucked up to begin with. But now this guy, assuming the mantle of a spokesperson for ideas with respect to liberty, is a joke, and he does need to be combated. And he's been afraid, and I confronted him on his fear, and then he tried to outwit me. He must not be a very good comedian, because he couldn't outwit me online.
No, he likes to come out with little snide remarks, like,
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right, but you're right. They need to be fought. This is the realm of ideas, and they need to be beaten, irrespective of how popular it is. Truth is often not popular.
But Hallie, I guess your original question was, how does it affect me? And I kind of went on a tangent because it's an emotional thing for me. I think it's important. But sometimes when people insult me like that, I don't care. It kind of depends on the mood I'm in, to be perfectly honest with you. Sometimes it annoys me. because it interferes with the broader discussion, and it's just, to me, is so irrelevant. You know, whatever. You think I was a bad person. Free will is a real thing. If you don't believe it is, then you have no business advocating politics. If you think it is, then you have to admit that I could have changed. And you may need it proven to you, and that's fine. Or you may not want to deal with me, but to just launch sophomoric insults, it bothers me little, and I wish it didn't even bother me that much.
Same. And the ones that bother me a lot, I got bothered on a debate the other night, and I regret my response to this jagoff. I thought of a billion different responses that could have been much better, but I literally wanted to reach through the screen and choke that fucker so hard and punch his face in. And it
Well,
came
to
out.
be fair, Mark, he did call you gay, so
Yeah,
I think you're.
I don't care, but I don't. It's not. I mean, I know he meant it as an insult, you know, but I mean, what offended me is not being called gay. What offended me was just how inappropriate and violent and entitled he was. That's what offended me. And it's like, because when I said, "Hey, dude, shut the fuck up," he's like, "No, I'm gonna keep going." It's like, yeah, if you were in my face right now, you wouldn't keep going. You'd be on the fucking floor on your fucking stomach, and I'd be sitting on your head, choking you out. You see, I'm getting mad now thinking about it. But this is my thing. This is my thing I got to control. So I got, because all of his silly ass followers that represent this wing of the Libertarian Party that are just morons, they're all laughing about it. And they're saying, "Oh, look how Josie, the redheaded libertarian, she knew what was happening. Look at her laughing at the moment." It's like they're playing with it on social media like a bunch of 5-year-olds that broke.
Can I tell you? I'm glad you brought her up, because I was just thinking about her. Actually, it's interesting,
okay,
because it is that whole wing. And I caught a little bit of an exchange that you had with Clint Russell,
yeah,
on her show. I find them all to be. I've met them both at a libertarian function a few months ago, and then I followed them and found out what they were about. Both of them, and I count them in the same wing. I've challenged. Listen, you're making a claim. What's your evidence? I did that to Clint Russell several times. He ended up calling. He said he believed I was a federal agent.
yeah, he's a conspiracy guy.
Me. Yeah, and he blocked me. Josie is the same thing. Is she keeps making these constitutional claims that are wrong over and over and over again. She did it in her discussion with you. Now, if you don't know, you don't know. And she's, oh, wow.
Which constitutional claim did she make was wrong?
I'll tell you in a second. So I challenged her over and over again, not disrespectfully. Okay, that's wrong. Here's why. What do you have to say? And she ended up blocking me too, as did the Mises Caucus, and as did the Mises Caucus's presidential candidate, Michael Rechtenwald, who wrote a book, Springtime for Snowflakes, because he's saying the culture is so riddled with snowflakes. But he can't take an ex-convict challenging him on internet. He had to block me when I didn't say anything disrespectful to him. So the claim the other day was, you were talking about immigration, and she said for the word invasion, she relies on what Scalia said in the Heller case. She said he relied on Webster's too. First of all, he relied on Webster's 1828 dictionary. She truncated the definition that he gave, that dictionary gives, in half. It is, and I don't know it exactly, but it says a violent, a violent encroachment around territory. But the thing that she left out was by a military. And there's also other sources that you can look to see that in the Constitution, it's not invasion. I mean, I'm screaming through my phone basically at this point, but you can go to Samuel Johnson's dictionary. It's online. And when he talks about what an invasion is, and you can go to James Madison's report of 1800, where he talks about that an invasion is an armed military entering your territory. She's so wrong on that, and she's so wrong about so much else, but she's got 500,000 devoted followers. These people have influence, they have reach. And to me, that means they need to be defeated.
Well, it's important that you leave out military, but from my perspective, it was like anybody using force, and if using force, it could be considered an invasion. But I don't think people crossing state lines to make their lives better can be.
Well, the problem is, Mark, it doesn't. The thing is, it doesn't. It matters constitutionally what an invasion is.
Right.
That's what matters.
And you're right. And people should know more what exactly that means and how that's defined. Nadelson right now has been writing article after article after article in the Epoch Times I haven't read them, but it seems as if he's justifying the concept of invasion through the Constitution. And I've formerly liked his stuff, but yeah, I can't in my own judgment say that somebody crossing the border just because there's a lot of them crossing over means that it's an invasion. I agree with your definition of it. It's an army that comes over and attempts to take over. Who else do we have, Lou, who has a question?
You've got Katrina, and I think Catherine has a question as well, although she can't raise hand.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
So first of all, I wanted to say, Mark, you know it better because you know me longer, but I am into objectivism a bit briefly, about 3 years since I follow you. And I got a lot of the ideas out of it through your reality checks and through the translations I made. Because to explain to you, Michael, I'm translating it into German. Every time when Mark puts out a new reality check, Lou sends me the subtitles and I go through them and translate them. So, and you, Michael, I follow for 6 months, I think now, and I'm listening to your podcast. So through you both, I got into objectivism. And I started to read Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, but in the middle I got stuck because somehow I was afraid to not get behind the ideas of that, or like you said before, Mark, not to know with which character I would identify, and that stopped me again from reading, and I'm somehow getting back into it, but yeah. And the same thing is for me on Twitter. If I follow your discussions on there, both of you, I follow the tweets and like the comments, so I see where I am at from reading, but something stops me somehow to put out my opinion, because I always wonder if I have enough knowledge to get it right. And yeah,
there's only, I mean, Michael, you may have a much better response than I, but there's only one way to find out if you have enough knowledge, and that is to put it out there and to test it, to get challenged, because the challenge is going to make you think. It's going to make you think, and that will be a great exercise for you. It may be painful, just like working out, right? You don't know if you can lift this weight, but you try, you try, and your body becomes better for the effort. Your mind will become better for the effort. And I encourage you to push through and read the books, finish reading the books. It doesn't matter if you identify more with the characters that Rand would consider villainous or, you know, flawed, bad. That's okay. You're a human being. You have the capacity of moral agency. You have the capacity of changing yourself from one thing to another, like Michael did, like I believe I did, like anybody does who adopts the concept of free will and a rational faculty. Michael, what would you say to all this?
I would say definitely push through the books. The books can help you get from identifying with a Peter Keating to identifying with a Howard Rourke. And as far as not commenting because you don't know if you know enough, I generally don't, if I don't know a subject, like to comment on it. But there is a way to maintain your integrity and comment, is just say, this appears to me that this is the case.
Yeah.
And
that's a good qualification.
Then your integrity is intact, because you're admitting, look, I'm not 100% certain, but this is what it seems to me to be. And who can challenge you on that? Nobody. And well, if they could, but they'd be idiots. I know.
But if they do, it's to me saying this appears to me to be this is actually it's not only a very contextual message. You're saying from what I know, this is the way it appears, but it does invite somebody to say, here's why you're wrong. Okay, it does invite a kind of benevolent challenge to, which might not happen on Twitter, but it does invite a kind of benevolent challenge to your ideas. And the challenge is good. It's good for you. It's good for you to think through what the other side thinks. It's good for you to see
Absolutely.
where the errors are in their arguments. Just like every time I roll with somebody a lot better than me, I'm finding the holes more than I did last time. I'm seeing things happen, before they're happening much more quickly than I did before. That only happens through the hard work of getting out there on the mat. You don't learn jiu-jitsu except being on the mat. You don't learn boxing except being in the ring. You're not going to learn philosophy except through practical application, in my view. And you're not going to get better without practically applying philosophy.
Yeah,
So stay tough, have courage. Courage is important. Put
I can
yourself
give
out there.
2 examples actually, what helped me. You mentioned the doing something although you're afraid of doing something.
Yes.
So I know on Tracy's homepage there's a video where you say that to the students, and that helped me actually for applying for my job, or for when they offered me the other job, and I thought, well, what have I to lose? I'm gonna ask for more money, or that they hire me for project manager, and that's what happened. That's because of I had this video of you in my head.
Well,
And
that's good. If that can inspire you to keep
yeah,
improving, great. I'm glad I brought some value to your life. Yeah, the video she's talking about, Michael, is I had a class full of actors, and I asked them who wants to go first, and nobody raises their hand. Nobody raises their hand. So I got up, I turned around, I'm like, well, this is weird, man. You should all be raising your hand. Everyone should be the first one to be up there, because you're concerned with all the wrong things right now. I said, be aware as an actor, you're working with the kind of stress that fighter pilots work with. They've actually done studies that say that the stress the actor lives under is very similar to a fighter pilot's stress. And I said, the only way you can mitigate that stress is by courageously going forward and saying, I'm going to fuck up. Give yourself permission to be super bad. Get up there and just put yourself out there. Your hand should be the first to be raised. Because that way you're your own judge and jury. You're not letting other people be the judge and jury of whether or not you're good. Well, thank you, Katrin, for that. I'm glad that helped you, and I hope you continue to grow.
of course.
Any other questions, Lou?
Let me see if Catherine wants to unmute, because she messaged me to say she couldn't raise hand.
Hi. First of all, Mark, I just wanted to say I had the same reaction when I finished the Fountainhead, that I just started crying, and I actually tagged somebody on Twitter and said, is that normal, to start crying after finishing the Fountainhead?
But for the same reason, or did you find a different reason?
But I was very confused. I was very confused, and I was very like it was like, wow, like I just took in all this, and now what, I had to sort it out, and it was just it was very emotional, because also that book kind of opened everything up. It started opening the philosophy up for me. I mean, I had been on, reading your threads, and we had been communicating on Twitter, and so I knew a little bit about it, but that book started to lay it out for me, and so it was really quite emotional. And Catherine, I had the same feeling. I don't like to comment on Twitter because I feel like I don't have enough knowledge and I feel stupid. But Michael, when I'm the one who's encouraged you not to continue with Dave. It was not so much Dave, it was his nasty followers. And I guess I was being more protective and more like, I just didn't see, the value in hearing their crap, it didn't seem to go anywhere. But when you came back and said, that you felt that you had to, continue, I respect that. I respected what you said and your reasons. I totally get it. I just hope that He will debate you eventually, and that you can get there without having to put up with too much of the crap from the other people. So I'm just hoping that you will. And I also wanted to ask you, how do you feel your talk, your podcast, your talk show helps you, or do you think it helps you since you've been out?
Well, it gives me purpose, first of all, to something that I want to do, because it's something that I want to do for a career. I'm hoping to grow it to where I can earn a living doing it. And I think it's a good show. It's just marketing is not my specialty and it takes time. A way that it does help me, though, a few ways, is I've talked to so many smart people, and that's just a great experience. I mean, I went so long without talking to smart people, being incarcerated. So to get to talk to them is very good. And not only that, but a lot of these people I've read their books while I was in prison, or I read about them. So they were like celebrities to me. And then to actually have them across from me. I mean, I've interviewed David Friedman, for instance, twice. His father, Milton, it was a Nobel Prize winner whose book on economics introduced me to the subject. And there's also that, when we were in prison, when I was in prison with Brent, and he and I are reading books on objectivism or books on economics, and we discuss them, it's not like going to college where a professor grades you on how well you understood it. Our verification of how well we understood stuff just came from each other. So there's no telling. We could have just been completely, missing everything. But by interviewing objectivist philosophers or economists, I'm seeing that, no, we did understand what we were reading. We got it dead on, which is it's a good feeling. It's vindication. It's nice to have happen. So that benefits me as well.
Well, that makes
But
you. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Catherine.
I said I wish you, much success, and I think your show is really, really great, and I really respect, that you want to continue to try to get, Dave on, and that, you stand by your principles, and that means a lot, and I respect that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I respect you for continuously calling Dave out. He deserves it, but he's too much of a coward. He's not really gonna face you. I have the feeling. But I think I don't want to take up too much more of your time, because we've gone 27 minutes over what I thought we were going to do, and I know you've got to do some. I know you've got to do some traveling today.
I do,
and
yes.
I'm hoping to see you in a couple of days, because I'm going to be in New York on from the 1st to the 3rd. So I hope to see you in person. And
you will, for sure.
And if anybody else has any questions, I'm sorry, but I don't want to take up any more of his time. How can people follow you? Tell us your socials, every way that they can get in touch with you if they have any more questions that they want to ask you.
Well, my podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere else you get podcasts. It's called The Rational Egoist. On Facebook, you can just look me up, Michael Liebowitz, and it'll come up. On Twitter, I don't know. I think you just look me up. Look up Michael Liebowitz, and I should come up on Twitter.
And those books that you guys wrote, are those published? They're out there in the world. Can people get them today?
Brett and you can get them. Down the Rabbit Hole is only available in print, but it's available and only at Amazon. That's Down the Rabbit Hole: How the Culture of Corrections Encourages Crime. And then the book that I wrote on my own, View from a Cage: My Transformation from Convict to Crusader for Liberty, that's available both in ebook, print, and it's available pretty much anywhere.
Get those books, guys. I think it'll help you understand the integration of philosophy with mental health and how philosophy can improve your life. Michael, it's been great to see you.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for engaging us, for asking your questions, for just being here. It's been awesome.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And goodbye.
Have a great day, everybody.
You too. Peace.